How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another Marvel Snap Zone video. We have another tier list for this week, this time for ladder. A lot of changes this week. Last week was a lot of Loki Collector focus, and this week there's a lot of anti-Galactus, anti-Alioth. I'm gonna say Alioth on accident, so don't flame me in the comments, but Alioth. A lot of anti-Galactus and anti-Alioth decks. So in some of these top decks, you're going to see a common card, specifically Cosmo, is in a lot of these top decks, specifically the top three. Before we get to that, I do want to go over the silent performers. We have Move, Alioth, Cerebro 5, and Good Card Stature. You've seen Good Card Stature. Cerebro 5 is pretty effective against Galactus. The ability for cards to move around makes it a little bit difficult for Galactus to go off. And then we have Move Alioth is new. I encourage you guys to check out these silent performers. I'm not going to go over them in this video, specifically the deck list. So go check them out. Den does a great job, has guides for all of them. He breaks down the deck, how it's played, what he thinks about the deck. It's fantastic. So please go check out the full article. My goal here is just to bring you just a quick breakdown of the overall meta. Speaking of quick breakdown, I'm going to start skipping over decks that we've gone over extensively in the past. My goal here is to give you guys just a quick digestible video, and I feel like I've been lingering on some decks over and over, video after video, and not giving you guys more information on these decks. So I'm going to skim over some of those, like Infiniti Hulk, like Shuri. We'll go over them and glance at them really quick, but for the most part, I'm going to skip through them. But really quick, let's talk about what has happened this week. Last week, everything was very focused on Collector. So Collector didn't post a fantastic win rate, Loki Collector. Now with Alioth, people are focusing on trying to counter the Alioth decks, which let decks move out of the way of Loki and bring that right back to the top. Even with the OTA changes for Collector and the buff to Shadow King, which is bad for Loki Collector, it's still doing fantastic. I imagine it'll come down slightly, but right now with the focus to Alioth, it's not. Shuri has fallen to tier 2. I imagine the buff to Shadow King probably hurt Shuri pretty good. And you'll notice Hela Tribunal is all the way down. You can't see it here, but it's all the way down in tier 3. I believe it was tier 1 last week. It's been a pretty solid deck. I know it was tier 1 in the Conquest list. It's been tier 1 recently, and now it's all the way down to tier 3. And again, mostly due to Alioth. So let's read over the list really quick. At tier 1, at the top, we have Loki Collector. And then second on the list, we have Evolved Doomwave, just a solid deck overall. Very consistent. We've gone over it in the past. You've seen it in the past. It's back with the buff to Doom. Very strong. In tier 2, we have Infiniti Hulk. It's the same list as before. Then we have Galactus, which is up from tier 3. It was in tier 3 the first week of the season when Loki was out. I assume people were experimenting a lot with Galactus, trying to get it to work before they throw in Alioth. But here it is at tier 2. Shuri down to tier 2 from tier 1. Then we have Discard Dracula up from tier 3. This deck has just been sticking around. It hasn't really gone anywhere. It's a very solid deck. Hasn't got any additional pieces really, but it's just been pretty good. Just a good consistent deck. Then we have Electro Ramp, which is pretty new. It's Electro Ramp, but like it's Galactus with just other stuff. We'll go over that list. Mainly the list I want to go over is Galactus and Electro Ramp, but we'll go over that list. It's basically a Galactus list with just fun stuff like Black Panther and some Odin, Alioth stuff. Anyways, Sarah Control is up from tier 3 to tier 2, and that wraps up tier 1 and 2. In tier 3 of Deadpool Destroy, Hela Tribunal, and Cerebro 3. I also want to note Cerebro 3 is down to tier 3. It made the list last week because of how effective it was against Loki Collector, but with the play rate of Loki Collector coming down this week, Cerebro 3's effectiveness in the meta has come down as well. So here it is at tier 3. Let's go over the decks. Let's skim through these. Loki Collector, I've gone over this in the past. I went over it last week. Believe it's the same exact list. The cube rate from last week has stayed almost exactly the same, roughly at 0.6. And once again, if I haven't said it enough, decks are less focused on beating Loki Collector, so this has more free reign to do well. OTA changes nerfed Collector a bit last week. It buffed Shadow King, and you think this deck would go down a little bit. It hasn't. Still here, still a very strong deck. I do want to note that Cosmo is in here. It's I'm not sure if that was in the list last week, but you're going to see Cosmo in these next few decks. It's very effective against Galactus and the Galactus meta. You go big in 2 lanes, and you can chuck Cosmo into that other lane to be sure that their Galactus can't go off. But Loki Collector, if you've been under a rock and you haven't tried this deck, please try it. It has some wild games, and it's a lot of fun. Next up, we have Evolved Doomwave. Just a solid deck. No crazy cards here, no crazy packages here. But with the buff to Dr. Doom recently, it's back up to the top. We've seen this list in different variations before. This one has high Evo in it. And once again, we have Cosmo to stop the Galactus list. Cosmo could get swapped out at some point, but as of now, with how the meta is shaping up, with Cosmo, with Alioth, fantastic include in most decks. It's also fairly effective against Shuri decks if you can guess properly. It's a little harder to counter Shuri decks with it, but I think people slept on Cosmo for a while, and there was a lot of focus for a few weeks there on Shang-Chi's, Enchantresses, and things like that. But now that certain on-reveal decks are in the meta, Cosmo is back. I'm not going to go over this deck too much. You know how to play it. You've seen it. I've gone over it before. Let's go down to tier 2. Infiniti Hulk. Same list. Again, Cosmo is here, but this is the Leech list, not the Moon Girl list. I'm actually surprised that this list is doing so well with Doomwave in the meta, with Wave and Galactus in the meta. This feels like it shouldn't be doing as well. There's a lot of Wave, and Wave really messes with this deck's goal as far as discounting She-Hulk, skipping a turn, discounting She-Hulk. If you skip turn 5 to play a discounted She-Hulk on 6, and they play Wave on 5, you're kind of SOL. It's also just fairly weak against Galactus in general. However, Alioth isn't a huge problem for this deck because you have the ability to go in different lanes on the last turn. So it's still up here. I'm just surprised it is with all the waves that we've seen. But again, notice Cosmo is in the list and in these top 3 lists. Next up, we have Galactus. This is one of the... It's not new, but it has Alioth in it now from this week. I've been having a lot of fun playing Galactus variations. I have not played this one. This is the kind of more straightforward traditional Galactus. Again, weak to all the Cosmos and weak to kind of the move synergies. It's hard to get Galactus off when things are jumping around the board, and it's easy for power to jump around the board for your opponent. I'm going to go over just really quick how the deck plays out. The goal of the deck is to get Electro or Wave out on turn 3. Everything else is just filler. If you play the Electro line, you're looking to play Electro on 3, probably Hobgoblin on 4 in a lane, and then try to Galactus in that lane that the Hobgoblin was played in. Have Galactus go off on 5, and then follow it up with priority with Alioth, and it's just a guaranteed win at that point. If you go the Wave line on 3, you're looking to play Galactus on 4. You can also Wave on 4, Galactus on 5, but you're looking to play Galactus on 4, get that off, and then again, Hobgoblin, followed by Alioth. It's the same as most Galactus lists that we've seen. There's no weird play lines or anything like that. Just a consistent deck, and right now it's doing very well, and right now it's very popular because Alioth is a ridiculous card, and reminds me of the old leader. It's not as annoying and oppressive, but like it really stops players from playing the game on turn 6 if their opponent can get priority. So anyways, now is the time to play Galactus. It's back. Give it a shot. Next up, we have Shuri. Once again, not going over this list. It's fantastic. I've been converted. Shuri's great in today's meta. I still don't think it's a top deck. Overall, when the meta shifts, it can counter Shuri very well. However, right now, it's very good. I understand that I've been a Shuri hater. I get it. I've been playing the deck too. Anyways, Shuri, not going to go over it that much here. Shadow King, the buff in the OTA, really affects this deck. You know, you're trying to double your card's power with Vision or Red Skull. Doubling Vision and then moving him around makes it a little bit harder for them to target something with Shadow King. However, you play Shuri, you play Red Skull, and then you're looking to win a third lane with Taskmaster. And all your opponent has to do is be winning one other lane and then play Shadow King on probably the lane that you're playing Taskmaster on, and you lose. However, still a consistent deck, and I don't, as you've noticed, Shadow King's not in a lot of these top decks, so they have to really specifically be countering specific decks with Shadow King for you to have some issues. So again, Shuri, it's not as effective against Galactus lists, it should be noted, because if they can get that Galactus off, when you play Shuri, you're telegraphing where you're going to play. And so to stop a Galactus, you need to play your turn 5 not on Shuri to hopefully stop their Galactus from going off, which really weakens what your turn 4 just did. So it's not really a straightforward game plan for Shuri against Galactus. With Renslayer, with the new card coming out, I don't know what the meta is 100% going to look like. Is Galactus going to be as popular? If it's not, maybe this deck does a little bit better if Alioth isn't there, if Shadow King's not there. So again, Shuri, moving on. Next up, discard Dracula. We've gone over this before. I'm not going to go over it again. It's a solid deck. It's a consistent deck. It's doing very well. It seems to have stuck around this tier 2 range for weeks. I don't even remember when it first came onto the list, but here it is. It doesn't care about Alioth. It doesn't care too much about Galactus. It does its thing. It's good at what it does. It's solid. It's consistent. I never thought I would say that the discard deck is consistent. I've never been a big fan of the discard archetype. I don't like the randomness. I don't like... I just never thought it would be good. If you asked me, 6 months ago what I thought about discard, I would tell you that it was garbage, and it probably always will be. But it's gotten a lot of tools since then and has just become a very solid deck. If you haven't tried it by now, you're probably not going to try it. Next up, we have Electro Ramp. Ramp Galactus extra stuff, whatever you want to call it. It's Electro Ramp, but it runs the Electro Wave Galactus package. From there, it shifts its focus into having other options outside of Galactus. It makes the deck a little bit more flexible than the straight Galactus deck, but not as effective at getting Galactus off. You're missing Hobgoblin. You're missing some of these cards that let you focus on just getting Galactus off, in exchange for having the opportunity to have other big plays happen. So if you can get Electro off, you can play Black Panther on 4, and then Arnim Zola the Black Panther on 5. That's pretty big. So you have the Black Panther Arnim Zola combo. You have the Doctor Doom Odin combo. You have the ability to Alioth and then Odin on the Alioth lane on turn 6. It has a lot of options. It also has Alioth into Arnim Zola. So it just has a lot of these like big cards, big plays, turn 5 and 6 options that the regular Galactus deck doesn't have. I think it's more fun. It has just more fun play lines and interesting things that can happen. Next up, Sarah Control. We've seen this before. This list runs Shadow King with a buff to Shadow King. It's just very good. It's another cheaper drop that is effective against the meta that lets you get a bigger hit monkey on the last turn. It's a little bit surprising that this is even in tier 2. Again, because of all the waves, it really hurts these decks that want to do a lot of things on turn 6. However, I guess the waves that are in the Galactus decks are looking to get played on turn 3, so that something can go off on turn 4. But even then, if a Galactus goes off, there's not a whole lot you can do with this deck. If a Galactus wins a lane, Alioth is just deleting whatever you play, but 4 slots, even on an empty lane, you don't have a lot to work with this deck to try to beat a Galactus deck and what it's trying to do. So surprising this is here, but I think we've all known that Sarah Control is just a solid list, well put together list, and then with a buff to Shadow King, more people are probably playing it at the moment. And that's it. We have the tier 3 decks. If you want to check those out, make sure you go check those out. I tried to make this video quicker than normal. Sometimes these ladder ones get a little bit lengthy and ranty, so I just wanted to hit on a few key points. I'm curious as to what the next card Ravana is going to do to the meta. I don't think it's like super impactful, but I'm curious to see what decks come out and what new archetypes come out with it. And then I believe Mobius is coming out right after that. So not like super exciting cards coming out relative to Alioth and, well, how exciting Loki was. I was convinced Loki wasn't going to be good because getting random cards generally is not a good effect, but clearly I was wrong. So I'm excited to see what happens this week with the meta and the new cards coming out. It's been Galactus week so far. I do one of these videos for the ladder tier list and the conquest tier list. So 2 videos a week on Marvel Snap Zone. So check me out on there. I also have my own YouTube channel. If you guys haven't checked me out over there, there'll be a link in the description. I do like bundle breakdowns, deck videos, all that kind of stuff. Looking to put out more content soon. So that's it. As usual, if you love all things Marvel Snap, make sure you like and subscribe, hit the bell. I'll see you in the next one.